Worth,
Aye.
Mr. McEnroth,
Yes.
Mr. Ben Simmons,
Here?
Mr. Morgan,
Yes.
and, well, we have a couple coming.
Okay. All right, let's go into the approval of the minutes. Looks like we've got a couple months worth. Were there any additions or changes on that from anybody? Not, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
And do we have a second? I'll second it. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And those are approved, and we can move on. Agenda, new business items and discussion items. Does anybody have any changes or additions or deletions? Perfect. We can move on then.
All right.
New business, public comments. Do we have any?
No.
All right, this is easy. Let's get right into the new business, and then the first one is the welcoming. So Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
And Julie will be here shortly, so we'll welcome her when she comes in. It's good to have you on board.
Thank you.
And so we're going to review the committee memberships and affiliations. So have we realigned some of what we've got going on here?
Yeah, so I just updated everybody. I added Chris and Julian, and I know that they are definitely a part of they're part of the neighborhood associations in their area. And if that's untrue, let's discuss it now so we make sure everybody gets aligned correctly. As we do have someone who's interested in interviewing, which we'll have come in next month. So making sure that they align correctly with our schedule.
And do we know if they hold any association with any other?
They're not on another committee or anything. They
Okay.
just, they are like in a neighborhood, the McLaughlin neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So it looks like we got everything else filled that we need to, and we've got the one outside the city limits, so we're all in compliance with everything at this point.
Yeah, everything looks good. I just want everybody to take a read over, make sure they're accurate, and that if we need to make any changes, we can talk about it now.
I'm curious on the neighborhood, so what neighborhood do you represent? Or would you represent?
I would represent Rivercrest.
Rivercrest, okay. And then the same would be true for Julie. No.
Yeah.
I'm looking at-
And Tim and I are both in Park Place as well, so there's an overlap there.
Okay, yeah, I see. Audrey already had that figured out. I just had an old version.
Oh, no, well, so the next conversation is the neighborhood associations. And if we get to the third page,
there is the
I've
updated
noted
one.
everybody's,
Okay.
what I was able to find. And there were some duplicates, and so I thought all of you can look those over and.
So Chris, Rivercrest is correct for you?
Yes.
And then Julie, welcome.
Hi.
Good to have you here. Gaffney Lane, is that the appropriate neighborhood association for you?
Yes.
Okay. And then Bruce is Gaffney Lane as well. Chetamere is just outside the city limits. Henry McLaughlin?
That would be the one.
Okay, and they've got me down business for McLaughlin, and then residence, I would be Park Place, which would overlap with Tim. And then Petronella, South End?
Yes, even though there isn't one, but.
I was gonna say, that's on the non-active list? Okay, all right, so we got a pretty good representation, okay. So that, we can just roll right into the next discussion then.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
For our names being listed, is it our nicknames or our legal names do you want on there?
I think we have legal names, and then like for Chris, I put that in there, so we.
Okay, because you need to update mine, because Tim's just my nickname, it's not my full
Okay,
name. but
Timothy. Thank
I
you.
don't take any offense to it. It's when
Yeah.
my full name is called, then I know I'm in trouble.
Oh, see? I agree.
Not the only one.
I will mark that down, thank you.
The only other thing I want to add, it seems like, I'm drawing from my memory here, the neighborhood association representatives, is Rivercrest active right now? Are they meeting?
Yes, they had a meeting on Thursday.
Do they know that you're serving as a neighborhood representative? Or I think they should know, I guess, so it would be worthwhile for you to.
I did tell them that I was on this committee and that my first meeting was this week.
Okay.
I don't,
I think it would be worthwhile to check with just let the neighborhood chair know that
Okay.
you're representing, and Julie, that'd be good for you too, just so that they know, one, you're on the TAC, and you're filling a neighborhood association affiliation, which I would think that they would appreciate.
Okay.
So I have.
The rest of you aren't, you're all in neighborhoods, but you're not here on behalf of the neighborhood.
Well, Tim at Park Place did a meeting
I did a meeting.
last month, so they should know very well with him.
Yeah. So that would be a part of our neighborhood, our next conversation is the neighborhood
Yeah, Abby?
associations. And that
Okay.
was to get an update from Tim of how that went.
Yeah, if you wanted me to do that tonight, I have my notes, so I
Okay.
can tell you what I discussed
Yeah.
and how wonderful you guys are.
I think we're there, so go ahead, you have the floor.
Okay, so, attended the Park Place Neighborhood Association, was at the church, they're not too far from the corner markets. There was a person there from the development company that's looking at developing the
Landfill.
the landfill, yeah. And they had some public comment. There was one representative from the Oregon City Police Department talking about crime issues and things like that. And then we talked about our stuff. Basically, I highlighted the app about how to communicate with the city. Talked about the phone book. We used to have a blue page in the phone book. It's no longer there. So I said, here's where you go to find your government offices and stuff. I laid out your department for Public Works, the contact people there, things that you could report on the app. It was very well received. Most people did not know anything about it. It was a pretty good attendance at the meeting. We talked about some of the things in the Park Place neighborhood that have been developed, have corrected here by the TAC committee. The street lights down on Redlands Road, the speed limit changes on the Holcomb. Talked about the pruning project after the storm, and so that during our last storm in December, we had no power outage, no internet outage, compared to the February 14th storm, which we lost all of that for 5 days on power, 14 days on internet and TV. Let's see, I talked about the streetlight addition on Redland Road. I don't know if I mentioned that. The other things that we were asking for them was about poor lighting at intersections in the city. One of the ladies approached me about some issues in Park Place. I said, told her kind of the process of it. We spoke about speed bumps or speed humps in the city, what the application process is, and that we had purchased 3 portable speed humps so we could be used at different areas of interest to see if it's worthy of going through the cost on that. Highlighted a little bit about the 205 widening project, earthquake retrofit, the tolling data, that was hot. I wasn't the answer for ODOT. I just gave them where they can go. So, let's see, what else was there? On the app, I talked about things that you can report, potholes, enforcement, abandoned vehicles, weeds, trash, landscape problems, dogs barking and stuff like that. And then I gave them an example how effective the app works. So I had put in a pothole request on Redlands Road in 213 at the traffic light. And less than 24 hours, Audrey responded, said that we have a ticket, and gave me the ticket number. So I showed how fast this responds. And then I got a thing back and found out it's not Oregon City, it's ODOT. And then I got a response back and I showed them how the chain. And I said, now, any of you people can figure this out? None of us can, but this shows the system works. So if you have everything to do on that, and I just kind of demonstrated the app, this is where you go in, push in the information, and go from there. So that was well received. And it also showed that the city cares and how fast they respond. Now, I sent an email to ODOT when I talked to your recommendation about this person that we were trying to get. It was 18 days before ODOT responded to me. However, the person that she referred me to initially, oh, actually, I contacted the center. They contacted me in 3 hours with one of the electricians, and he was great, really nice to talk to. But the people about the traffic scenario on Redlands, or excuse me, on 213 interchange, and there's some issues there where people are trying to run you over when you're coming on the off-ramp to the on-ramp. And they've deferred it to somebody else in part of the 205 project. So I'll wait, and I'll wait to hear from them, and I have them. I'll talk to them about the potholes there, and also the, trying to get a protective barrier when you're coming. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about, coming on the 213 off the 205? And then people trying to get to the dump?
Yeah, that's,
It's
there's a little lane jockeying that needs to happen there.
Feels like you're at the racetrack, the horse racetrack.
I've discovered that.
You need to get a car and not a horse.
Yeah.
I discovered that it's helpful to understand that you can get off at Redland Road and still get to where you want to go.
So the other things finalized was listing John and Vance and Audrey, their contact numbers. I didn't have it on the screen, so they didn't have to take it all down. They just listened to me. And then I gave them the information about how to keep up to date on Oregon Department of Transportation's tolling program, the website, where you can receive emails from. You get signed up and get the updated data and all that. Other question that was brought up was about the sidewalks on Holcomb, and I said, I don't know specifically, but I think it's been approved, but it's not officially out yet. So there was a lot of people really upset, really happy about that. And I think we'll have an announcement tonight, maybe, if that's true or not. So, and that was it. Probably spent 20 minutes drilling through it, and then there was a few storytellers that had to talk to you about. So I think it was well.
Did you actually put together a PowerPoint for that, Tim?
No, I didn't. I had my notes all typed up, and I just kind of went through it because I didn't know what their setup was. So this was really our first trial run. So I think I'll probably use the same thing, and the next I'll do a PowerPoint if somebody has an actual.
Most of them don't, but.
Yeah, they did have a computer, but it was used for Zoom. So I don't know if it would have given them all that, but they did have the meeting zoomed to people also. So.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing that, Tim.
You're welcome.
And then second of all, I know, and maybe this leads into the conversation with Audrey and I had in the packet she's put together, is she's really worked hard on getting together, and Dana as well, to put a packet that maybe we can put in a PDF format or something that we could do as a presentation along with a one-page quick access sheet. So for some of our newer members, what we're trying to do is participate with the neighborhood associations, give them a liaison, give them somebody that they can ask particular questions at these meetings or be in our eyes and ears so we know some of the topics that might be coming our way before they just crash into our laps. So we're not making it mandatory that everybody goes to these, but we're encouraging for everybody participate maybe once a quarter or twice a year in one of these meetings and make yourself known and a reach out contact point for the board. So with that, Audrey, I don't know if you want to go through the packet or.
I can, and so I will, yeah. So I brought up the website. I thought I could walk everybody through. So this is just the neighborhood information. And everybody has a packet, so you know who to contact when you decide where you're gonna reach out to. But after the meeting, when you want to find this, you could come to the board and commissions under government to transportation advisory. And this is your TAC page. And this is where it lists all of the information that is also in this packet that I handed to you. So if you scroll down to the very bottom of the page, I've created a link for everything that's in that packet that's provided under your desk. So the one that's called TAC resources, I'm gonna open it up here. If you were to come online, you can hover over each of these and open them up. Right, so it's just one page that will bring you to each link of all of these documents. Or you can also go to back here and click on them individually. If you're like, I really just want to know about the speed hump installation, there it is. or the neighborhood traffic fact sheet, which we have been updating together. And you received in an email just to kind of do a read through and give your feedback, if there's anything that needs to be updated too. So I tried to make it as simple as possible and just have those one pagers of everything they can easily access. Whether you're in a neighborhood meeting or beforehand, you can check this out and print it on your own if you just need a couple copies, or you can reach out to me and say, I would like so many copies of this.
And then I think by next meeting, we'll probably also have a one-page flyer that's gonna be a quick summary, few bullet points of what the TAC does. Some of the key items, like we talked about, the radar trailer and the speed bump program. There was one other one, I think there was a highlighted item. And then with that's gonna be a QR code that's gonna tap right into this resource. So if they wanna go down as many rabbit holes as they want and read all the detailed information, we're making it simple. But if all they want is a general consensus of what it is, who we are, what we do, how we can help the neighborhood association, maybe that's something we can take with us as to head off some of those questions. If they want to go in deeper dives into things, it's like, here's your resource and here's how you get there, here's how you get the information. So,
You know, my thing was that I worked with Audrey quite a bit because you guys your system was completely locked down, so I couldn't even get a flyer out of her. So I just went through a thing, she told me to look at a few web pages, and I went in there and grabbed a lot of data from there and just did a familiarization. But I think the best thing would be ever have a PowerPoint presentation so we disseminate a uniform message to everybody. And then that way we can direct it, and if we have a flyer that has a QR code or something like that, then they can go furthermore. But I was really surprised. I had a really good, and our old friend was there from the board. Bob, yeah, he was there. So I got time to chat with him. But yeah, it was well received. And I guess that's on the development were the two hot topics there. So
Audrey, sorry that I'm interrupted, but I think the screen isn't working over here.
That one doesn't work. I did check. So instead of putting you over there by yourself, I kept you with everybody.
Oh, you're
But
fine.
those two computers don't work the same way as all the other ones.
Okay.
I was planning on telling you in advance, but we didn't get there. Sorry.
so are we able, if anybody has any changes to this list and then the other document we come up with, are we within guidelines if we respond as a group message? Is that within the public record
I
laws,
think
okay?
so. Do either of you know those rules?
Or do we need to take care of it in person here?
No, so we have, I'm glad you asked that question, because we have had problems when we do group emails, because it is, and that all of a sudden makes that conversation a public conversation.
Right.
So normally, if you are having a conversation with more than maybe one member, or, more than one member in Audrey, then yeah, it'd be better to do that. Send her the email and she can disseminate the information to the
So
group.
then, probably what I would recommend is that one-page flyer we'll probably have out in the next month. So if you guys look through that and look through this packet and mark it up and bring it to the next meeting, and then any changes that we want to propose, we can do at the next meeting then. That way we don't,
And then if you could write your name, if you're gonna do it on the physical copy, write your name so that I know who's wanting what.
who's the thought?
Yeah, who's the thought behind it, if I have a question or something.
so then hopefully by next month, we'll have a pretty well put together packet to arm ourselves as we're going into those neighborhood meetings.
Yep. As a basic rule, having dealt with this open public meeting thing for decades, it's best to just assume that anything you say or write is an item of public record.
Good rule of thumb.
Yeah, the whole idea is to not try to have a kind of a quorum conversation. And I know it takes more than two to make a quorum, but it depends on how many members we have, I guess. But we're pretty full right now. So yeah, that generally, but I think the idea of marking something up and sending it, was that the specific question that you had? Because we can do that. I mean,
I was just
mark
thinking,
things up and send them.
they've
Just
got the
don't send them
packet
to
in this
everybody.
month's, we'll have the one-page flyer in next month's. So I was pretty well thinking if we brought those with us to the next meeting, then we can avoid all that conversation online.
Okay.
So how do we want to divide up the neighborhoods that we should all contact.
So, go back, do we have that list again?
Yeah, all of you have it. I'll bring it up on the
There we
screen
go.
too, but, it's probably like the third-ish page in your packet, somewhere in there. Or maybe it's the second. And I could write down the name of everybody here and send that out, like keep track of that too, or somehow keep it together with for all of you to review later. And I know that Tim has done Park Place, and so I think, I don't know if like Julie wants to do.
Gaffney.
Julie's gonna take Gaffney? Okay. And Petronella, did you have South End?
I do, but there's nothing there.
They're the one
That's
that's
right,
not
so,
active?
yeah.
Okay.
There are two that are not active. That's Hazel Grove Westling Farm, and probably the one she just mentioned, which is South End.
And then Chris, which one was yours?
Rivercrest.
Rivercrest, and they are active? And are you okay checking in with them?
Sure.
Okay. Henry, are you okay with the McLaughlin neighborhood?
Oh, I'm okay there. I'm also at large, which basically means I can just wander around.
And I was, well, yeah, and what I was gonna say, if there's anything left over, let me know which ones, and I can step in, and since Tim already has one of my neighborhoods, and Henry has the other.
And so like there are many left over, right?
Okay.
So if we want to go through each of them, I don't know if you want to volunteer now or just throughout the year, we'll just keep on hearing updates from people and then
I could take Elyville.
you live in.
And Julie, Audrey and I were talking about this very topic, which board members are, where they live and which neighborhood association. So Bruce Fries is also in Gaffney, and I think he's fairly active with the neighborhood association. So maybe next meeting, if he's here, I'd be great to see you two coordinate, and whether it's you take a month or he takes a month, or whether you want to team up as the TAC board tag team duo and go to a meeting together. But anyway, I just want to mention that we
Okay.
do have another board member that's active in Gaffney.
Sounds good, thanks.
I forget, which neighborhood is the hospital in?
McLaughlin.
And that area behind it?
McLaughlin.
Okay, thank you.
I guess what I'd say there is keep us updated on, plans, and just like Tim did today, keep us up to speed on how those meetings go. And I'll just kind of keep an eye on it with maybe Audrey, and if any of these neighborhoods are not getting seen or not getting visited, then I'll take it upon myself to go in and poke my head.
Well, Rivercrest and Elyville both
Okay.
had their meetings last week.
Okay. Good deal.
And so I included all the contact information. And also, if you get online and get this document, these are also links to all of the different places. Or you could go to the website and go to each of them too. So there's lots of ways to reach out.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Anybody else has any comments on that? If not, we will move on to the distracted driving campaign, and I see a bunch of stickers on the table.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was looking for a document. It disappeared on me. Okay, so for the distracted driving campaign, Oregon Impact was planning on having their 2023 items chosen so that we can look through them and select something. I know I had brought a bunch of examples last time, and they have some of that on hand, but they don't have, we can't order it. I could probably bring a few of those items that you marked off that you liked, but we won't be able to order anything right now because they have not selected their 2023 gear. But what I did find were the garbage can stickers that were used many, many years ago. And so you could bring those to the neighborhood meetings with you, and they could use those because it's been so long. It's probably like a fresh hit for all of them. And then also, I was trying to look up some distracted driving, like there's a pamphlet, but I need more understanding of how you want to discuss this with the community. And that, I think that's what we wanted to talk about more is, like, I believe it was Chetamir who had mentioned doing an article in the Trail News. The summer one is coming out, and we need to have it ready by April 6th or 7th. So we gotta move fast if we wanna put it in there. And then there's the monthly e-Trail News, right? Do I have that right? So we have options. I just need direction and what we're gonna determine what to put into those.
So they don't have the materials ready, but we are locked in on the campaign message, is that correct? Okay. And then when would we expect to see those materials showing up? Because I know, not National Night Out, what's the one you do, Vance, with the?
Yeah, National Night Out.
Is it National Night Out? Would we have them in time for that?
I think so, but she's gonna send me an email. She doesn't have any update for me right
Okay.
now.
And then are they going to be stickers like we've got
That's
here?
what I have to find out.
Okay.
They have to determine everything
Okay.
still. So I've reached out to her a few times and she let me know that she will email me when she knows.
All right.
So I will update everybody as soon as I know too. But in the meantime, I thought we can do this and then, and I could look online to see if I could find anything to order.
Okay.
Oh, aside from Oregon Impact, but
All right, so
Haven't found
we'll
anything
hang
so
tight
far.
and see what they come up with, order it when we have it available. Hopefully they'll be here for National Night Out.
Yeah.
Then, once these are gone, we can go ahead and supplement the new ones when we start doing our neighborhood association meetings.
yeah,
Okay.
Do we know what that date is for National Night Out?
I believe it's August 1st, the first Tuesday of the month of August.
I mean, really depending on what it is that we decide to come up with, there's public events like that, National Night Out's the kind of premier of events like that the city now has. So that's going to be, that's an obvious one. But I mean, you know, depending on, if we go with coasters, it may be an outreach to the bars or, you know what I mean, those kind of things. Although we're not going with no drinking and driving, it's distracted driving this go around, right? So, but bar folks just drive distracted too, so I think that's an option. But, you know, I mean, it does kind of depend on, you know, how ambitious the TAC wants to get with kind of outreach and whether or not that's really what you're interested in or not. But, so not knowing exactly what they're gonna have is a challenge until we can figure that out. It's hard to develop a campaign. But if we go with kind of one of these packaged campaigns, that's the idea, as opposed to, that was a self-done. That was Officer Willard who helped us with the design of those. And we had B&B Leasing sponsor the sticker manufacturing. And I didn't know we had any left. So looks like we have quite a few left.
They moved it over from Center Street.
Oh, really? Yeah. So,
Maybe you could put one on or two of them on one of the trucks.
yeah, they're intended to go on the garbage cans so that you roll them out once a week and maybe it's a new message or feels new, at least renewed once a week. That was the intention. And I still see one or two around town, so I think.
I see some in my neighborhood, yeah.
There's one on Holcomb on there, right at the real dips part there, it pushes it right out.
It slows everybody down, right?
Yeah, they're all reading, like,
Yeah, they're all reading it. They're all distracted.
trying to miss the deer and the curve.
All right, so we'll get the new old message back out again.
There you go.
And then once we have direction from them, then, you know, are we gonna have time to put it in the Trail News? I guess we can just do it the next month, once they come up
Well,
with.
the trail news is quarterly, but there will be e-trail, which is email. And I
Okay.
think that would be a good source also.
Okay, so let's wait till we get the full direction from them and maybe next month's meeting, we can come up with a game plan. Okay,
That sounds good.
alrighty, on to the Public Works report.
All right. So I think at the last meeting, there was some questions about the safe routes to school. I think I let Vance share that information because I was at another meeting.
She may be able, I'm sorry, it's because of me. Maybe I won't worry about it. Those on Zoom see my screen, not that screen, but I will close out what I was doing. That should work. How does it work now? I think that was my error. Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay, so these were the questions that I believe were the follow-up questions from the Safe Routes to School announcement. So yes, we did receive the Holcomb Boulevard Safe Routes to School grant award, approximately $1.6 million that'll be matched with $400,000 of city funding for a project cost of a little over $2 million. So these were the questions that were forwarded to me. Will the missing sidewalks by Market Store through the curve of Redland Road be in future developments? Will the upper parts of the Sears development piggyback on the Safe Routes to School project? And sidewalks related to the Icon development, there are no markings on the map for these areas. So this is kind of the visual we've been sharing related to the Safe Routes to School project. And kind of for a little bit of background, all the area that's hatched in both the green and the orange was our original project. And as we kind of went through the cost estimating and reviewing the grant criteria, we had to cut the project costs. They did put a cap on the size of a project that could apply. And so as we did that, we really looked at where are we going to see that biggest benefit for the students walking and biking. And so that's how we got to the orange area. So that was a size project that would compete well in the grant and would accomplish the goals of the grant program. So that's why on this map, because we kind of started with all of this in an orange color, and so as we kind of worked through that, we've got the green areas. And so again, there is the area that's the frontage of the Sears property, which will happen as that project develops, as well as the RRFB closest to Holcomb Elementary School. And then those other green areas shown would happen either as a future city project or as frontage improvements on a private development. So kind of going back, I think the first question was the missing sidewalks by the store, which I believe is right there at Front Avenue or Front Street, which were kind of outside of the Safe Routes to School limit. They do have a limit of about 1 mile. And so I think our 1 mile radius kind of got us to Front Street. So the walking map, so again, this is another, it's a little messy to show you the whole corridor. But the yellow or kind of orange lines are existing sidewalks, and the green solid lines are future projects that are in the transportation system plan. So again, you can see there in front of the market by Front, there would be a future sidewalk. It could occur with adjacent development, it could occur with a future capital project. So the transportation system plan does show that sidewalk in that area. It just isn't able to be included in the Safe Routes to School project. The question about the Sears development piggybacking on the Safe Routes to School project. I wasn't entirely sure what the question was. They will do their own frontage. It'll be, built by their project, separate from the Safe Routes to School project. So I don't know if that answers that question or if there was more to that one.
I'm not sure who proposed it last time, but I guess, so the sidewalks that we're leaving in front of their property will just connect right into everything we're doing. And
Yep.
that, when they're done with that frontage, that'll be all inclusive.
Yep, we've got their approved plans. As we move forward in design of our project, it will connect into those sidewalks.
Okay. And I saw a different coloration if we go back one slide. The beacon in front of the Sears project, I'm seeing one in gray and one in red. So is
Yeah.
the red one going to occur with the safe schools?
Yes.
And then that one will, when the Sears project completes, then the second one will go in? Okay.
Yes.
I'm reading that right.
What is, so when does the city anticipate to have city portion of work done?
Our Safe Routes to School project, we're currently negotiating a scope of work with a consultant. Should hopefully have that work wrapped up. And a contract awarded ideally early April, and they will hit the ground running. We do have about 9 right-of-way files that we anticipate needing, so we will need small strips along the frontage to be able to construct that new sidewalk. Assuming that goes well, the goal is to have the project complete by the start of school in 2024. That's an aggressive schedule with that many property owner negotiations. But that's our hope and our goal.
Okay.
Another question on that stretch of Holcomb between Front and Swan, I guess on the south side. I mean, those are all single residences, like I didn't see how much development would have happening there for them to be constructing anything. Is that something the city's going to take on?
I guess I agree with you on the fact that those properties are unlikely to do much more than maybe rebuild another single-family home or a multifamily home on them. If they have to go through a land use process to do that, we would condition the sidewalk to be built. But the other problem with some of that is there's no storm drainage system. And so kind of like with the Holcomb project, there's some storm drainage improvements that happen with that project. So sometimes it feels like it's really simple to just build a sidewalk. Well, you got to think about the fact that there's a ditch there now or some kind of a drainage system. So I think the south side projects are they're going to have to be grant funded. They're going to have to become a higher priority. And so I don't have a sense of when that will be. I think we've been struggling to get this piece that we're building and that the Sears property is building will complete pedestrians from
Kitty Hawk, all the way down.
yeah, all the way down on one side of the road. And then, the rapid flashing beacons are designed to kind of help connect even the sidewalk elements that are on the kind of the south side of the road as well. And the Sears property is also required to build a pathway along kind of their north-south property line to get it into the elementary school. So, this whole concern about letting, elementary school children walk along Holcomb Boulevard, that's, I think there's a lot of folks that won't allow that to happen, but still just the neighborhood walkability, that'll be nice. But trying to complete the stuff really from Longview Way, if you will, all the way down to Front, that's, there's going to have to be some real soul searching because it doesn't compete well even on a grant, on most of the grants that we look at, right? Because it's not a Safe Routes to School program. That's really the only sidewalk grant we've come up with. And there's probably right-of-way files on each one of those. So trying to navigate that. It'll be interesting. I don't know if you remember, but I think it was Bob LaSalle who was pretty adamant. I think him and John Anderson, you guys remember John Anderson? He was also on the Transportation Advisory Committee. At one point, I think they went and actually knocked on doors and talked to those property owners that were there at the time, and they sounded willing to help the right-of-way dedication process move more smoothly.
These being the ones by Holcomb or down towards Front?
No, up here. No,
Okay,
by
the
Holcomb.
ones that we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, but we've not had too much success with property owners just donating their right-of-way frontage, even though we're building the improvements. There's still usually, once there's an understanding that they can get something for it, that they want that something. So we'll see how it goes, but imagine having to do that all the way down the other section of Holcomb as well as building. So I think it's a need. I know we've heard that, especially with that rapid flashing beacon down there. We've heard that from some of the neighbors, but I don't have a financial plan for how we could really do that.
I see it, that RFP being utilized, but I also see people walking on on the south side of the Holcomb, too, so.
Dina, is that overhead service there? And do we need to relocate then?
There are PGE poles that will need to be moved.
And you want to do this by June?
I believe that outreach has started.
Okay.
John, would you refresh me on what the city's position on Bancrofting is?
Bancrofting, you mean like a local improvement district?
Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting. We're having budget meetings, and this topic came up because we listed a project. I think it was for sewer, try to extend sewer into, which is much more common for local improvement districts than say a sidewalk would be, where so a local improvement district, the city has city code on what we call a local improvement district, where you identify an area, you identify a project need, and the property owners, it's presented to the property owners in an engineering study that says, hey, we want to build sidewalks in your neighborhood, it's going to cost $100,000, and there's 20 residents, so what's that? Now I'm going to do my math. Anyway, you divide that up amongst the 20, and they would have an assessment, and the city could either fund part of that or not, right? And so there's this engineering report that goes into how you would allocate those costs. So the church, for instance, would have a bigger cost than their neighbor who's just a single-family residence. And that local improvement district is in our code. We haven't done it in the 20 years that I've been here with the city. My prior employer, we used to do it for sewer pretty regularly. And so when I put it in the budget, the question was, well, we haven't talked about that as a city commission lately. And I said, yeah, you're right, but I'd like to still pursue it with a sewer project in a particular neighborhood.
I believe there's still either a 10 or 20-year program to be able to pay off that assessment.
Right, yeah.
And doesn't it really work by having the city front the money and then collecting a payment back with interest?
Does it work? If we have the money, depends on the size of the project, yeah.
So, I've seen it done with bond sales.
Yeah, well, we've got the other voter-approved indebtedness, right? So bond sales is probably not gonna work, but if we had the funding to pay for it, which we're finding in our transportation fund, funding is getting pretty tight, because we've got some other bigger projects that I think are coming online.
There's always more projects than there are money.
Right. Yeah, so, there's the process of the local improvement district, there's the amount of funding we have available to do it, there's the community buy-in for it, there's the politics of it, all those things are kind of uncertain. So yes, it's in our code. And I can see lots of benefits to having it, having projects completed that way. But those that usually get the assessments don't necessarily agree with me on that one.
And ICON work that's coming through, right? They wouldn't be triggered, or they wouldn't be required to make, conditioned to make those sidewalk improvements.
So depends on which ICON development. So ICON's developing the Sears property, which is shown in the green dash line up there. And their condition is to build that sidewalk along their frontage. Right?
Yeah,
so all developments will have frontage improvements. If we're talking about more of the Park Place concept plan area that's in Luba Appeal, how much off-site requirements we can do is always a question for our attorney team that usually says you're asking for more than you by rights have a right to ask for.
Okay.
And so, and it's kind of apparent because those pieces of sidewalk right there, many would argue that they're needed today with or without the ICON development. I think the community feels like asking a development to pay for offsite improvements is okay, but there's limits to how much of that we can deal with. They do bring trips, but is that the right solution to those trips? That's usually the question that comes through when that development application comes through.
Tualatin got tripped up on that a long time ago.
Yeah, it's, you know, we have a tendency, I have a tendency whenever developments come through, I'm always like, oh, can we get them to do this? And usually the attorneys are like, no. So, yeah, it's,
But for the time being, with this project and the completion of the Sears project, we'll have one side of the road pretty well complete, top to bottom.
yeah.
Okay.
Is there
John, the
anything-
local improvements that you're talking about, is that for installation of new mains sewer lines then? So it's not like existing and then you're replacing a whole new main line?
That's a super good point. Local improvement districts usually, and we're generalizing, you could decide to say, we've got a neighborhood and all the sewer lines are failing and we need to fix them and we're gonna do it by way of a local improvement district. We could do that, but we've got a sewer utility which is supposed to be funding that maintenance and rehab of the existing sewer lines. So to propose that kind of a project would definitely probably go down in flames because they're already paying sewer rates for that, right? But the local improvement districts that I'm talking about are areas that are unserved, that are in the city, that have been on septic for ever since they were built and probably should be on a city sewer. And we have some pockets right in the heart of our neighborhoods that are like that. Not many, but a few.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, we own a property right outside the urban growth boundary as well, and it's on septic, but I mean, if it fails, I'm like the only one at the end of Caulfield Road.
Okay.
So, and that's like a $50,000 investment
Yeah.
in that, so.
Yeah. Caulfield.
Where the tree farm was.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, if you're outside the urban growth boundary, we really
Hard
struggle
to
with
annex
that.
in, right?
Okay.
So I think, so this kind of takes us back to the icon one. So the green line still shows a TSP project out there on that, the Park Place Development one, which I think was that third question from the last meeting. And then just for fun, I also put the biking one on there as well to show existing and future biking facilities.
Is there any re-road surfacing from about the curve just south of, or just west of the school up to the top of the hill? Because it's kind of like Stagecoach ride. Have you ever see how bumpy it is? It's got a lot of.
Is it bumpy because of pavement condition? Because the road grade over there, just by virtue of the fact that that's an old county road and it's had infill development, even with the Icon project, there's still gonna be some of those humps and,
There's a lot of humps and bumps.
yeah.
And
So
bumps.
there's nothing in the works to kind of draw a nice, smooth vertical curve or alignment through there for our road profile. Mostly because in order to do some of that, we'd have to, you know, really change the grade of the road, which then questions the depth of the utilities, the water and the sewer and so forth. So no, there's not really a big plan for that. I mean, we do the best we can with the development projects, but even that, like the Sears property, they gotta match what's happening on the other side of the street too.
Right, once
So-
you get there, it's not bad, but west of that, you know, there's a lot of sinking of the grade there. Surprisingly, the asphalt really hasn't separated, but it's just kind of like all kind of sinking together.
I don't know if it's sinking or, I'd have to look at it, Tim.
I'll send you a video.
It's not too hard to drive up there.
He knows what I'm talking about. It's like you're hanging on a four-wheel drive driving up.
It's traffic calming.
It is more than traffic calming.
All right, so the next item that was shared with me, that was a question at the last meeting or was sent to us between the meetings is discussion about crashes on 213. And so what you can see on this map is ODOT's crash mapping program. And again, I think I shared something similar to this when we talked about Gaffney and Berta. So the red dots are the largest ones on the screen. Those indicate a fatality. The yellow dots are a non-fatal injury, and the blue dots are a crash with property damage only. And so the dots on this map are representative from 2016 to 2020. So this kind of gives you a visual of where those crashes occur. Occasionally, the dots are kind of stacked on top of each other. And so kind of for perspective, Highway 213 has an average daily number of vehicles at 41,000. So 41,000 vehicles use this corridor each day. So the purple lines I've placed on the map are the extents of the crash data that I pulled out of ODOT's system. And so when I pulled that data, so between those two purple lines, this is kind of a quick look at the crash types, both by type and by year. And so what you can see on this is that the crashes are predominantly a rear end crash. So a rear end crash is typically caused by driver inattentiveness or traveling too close to the vehicle in front of them.
Or
So they're-
perhaps distracted.
Yes, so they're generally a crash that isn't something you can engineer out, the crash. So it isn't something that you can change the roadway or change the characteristics to remove or reduce those type of crashes. There are a few things that you can do. So you can kind of see a turning movement is anytime they're turning, and again, with this section of roadway, there's pretty limited turning movements because of the separation and the layout of the corridor. So what I didn't show here, because I wanted to give you information but not kind of overwhelm it, the data that comes out of the system also shows that most of these crashes occur on a dry surface during the day. So what that tells me is people, when it's raining, they're thinking, I need to pay a little more attention, because we see less crashes in the rain than we do in the dry, and more crashes during the day. So if it's night and it's dark, people are generally paying more attention. So those are kind of the few things that I can pull out of the crash types. This is a little bit similar when I pulled all the crash data for 213 and Beaver Creek. Most of those crashes are rear end, also during the day, and in dry pavement. That intersection does have a lot of angle crashes due to it being, a four-legged intersection. But again, I think what we saw when we looked at 213 and Beaver Creek is it's a long stretch of what feels like country roadway, and then all of a sudden you're at a new signal and kind of back in that urban environment. So those were kind of some of our observations when we looked at the other end of this corridor. So the other grouping that I did was the crashes by severity. So in this corridor, now, so again, I'll share that the data that I can pull out of the database gives me information up to 2021. My map does not show the 2021 dots. So I get different information out of the mapping and out of the database.
The map also shows 2016 to 20, right? So
Yes, yeah,
the
so I pulled
5 years.
all the data that it would let me pull. So it goes all the way back to 2012, which 2012 is pre the jug handle project. And so as you can see, through 2021, there's been one fatality in that mile-long section of 213. That occurred in 2018, and that was a pedestrian fatality. A pedestrian chose to cross the highway, and so that's kind of that data. I did hear there was a crash just within the last couple of months, which included a fatality on 213. I did review that police report. There was a truck traveling southbound and a car traveling northbound near, let's see if I don't think I can point. I think I might be able to point this way. So here's where Clackamas River Drive, so a little bit up here, right where the concrete barrier ends, the crash occurred right at the end of that. So the car which was traveling northbound was observed crossing over the lane into the center travel lane and appeared to overcorrect and then ended up essentially making a left turn across and T-boning the car driving southbound, which resulted in a fatality.
There's not much opportunity to do that. There's a very small window.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if that was the car that was in half on the road, I remember seeing that.
Wow.
It was a very wet night.
Wouldn't surprise me, they were making a U-turn down there
Yeah.
No.
in traffic.
from
I've
the-
seen some.
From the
that.
traffic report, there was witnesses.
The officers that was at the Park Place meeting on the 27th, he said that week of the 20th of February, there was another fatality on 213 by the on-ramp. So that just occurred a couple weeks ago. There was questions about that. He didn't know too much about it, but there's a real big of a problem, people making that right turn to get on northbound. They seem to like to keep jettisoning over the grass into the rock, down the side, and into the traffic there. I don't know how they managed to do that.
The whole, like, the off-ramp, and, well, even when you're getting off the 205 on 213, that happened to me tonight, and I was in the lane where I just needed to merge one lane, and there was vehicles, and I couldn't get off. I had to go through intersection, take the Redland Road. And I mean, cars, I saw, pretty nasty accident there too. Like, people come so fast off that ramp around there, and they can't make that turn onto 213, and they will tend to float out, and the other vehicles coming, and boom. It's kind of, that whole design there doesn't seem to work well.
Yeah, I think the Jug Handle did a really good job, but the bridges that, there's a railroad bridge there, and then the new bridge where Washington goes under, in order to make that change different, you're either prohibiting folks getting off at Prairie Schooner Way and forcing everybody down to Redland, or, yeah, it's just, you're right, you have to be pretty aggressive to make that transition.
The only way I can see to make it any better is to shut off Pioneer Drive and make everybody use Redland and then come back on Abernathy.
Yeah, Prairie Schooner, you mean? Prairie Schooner, yeah. Okay.
I will say that since we did the re-signage down there, we're not seeing as many cars doing U-turns on Redland Road now. I used to wonder why everybody was always doing U-turns there. And that was people getting out of Home Depot, getting on the freeway, wanting to go northbound on 205, and realize they can't cross because there's the barrier there.
All right, so the new
Yeah.
signage we put on Washington.
Yeah, and I did mention that at the Park Place neighborhood, about the re-signage around there, about getting people back on the right direction. But I have not, I travel, that's where I travel, go home and, to and from work. Excuse me. But there used to be, I used to have people doing U-turns in front of me every day. Going there, I was like, what are you guys doing? Little did we know that's what it was. It was people leaving Home Depot, getting lost, trying to get back. So that's working.
Good.
I think, that's significant. But the speed between Redlands Road and Prairie Schooner has got to stop, has got to be reduced. It does not make sense having that 55 miles an hour with the traffic lights there, because people are doing 65 down the hill at minimum.
Yeah. And they tailgating at 65 to
Yeah.
70.
And if you're in work mode, you might get it over, 70.
And the light at Redland Road is at that speed, when you're coming down the hill,
It's not
is
long enough.
not highly visible when it changes if you don't know where to look. That is to say, it can be red and you won't know it until you either see the cars stacking up behind it, or you look off to the side and see the cars coming off of Redland Road and turning on to 213. I mean,
I think that's what she's
Yeah, I think
showing.
she's gonna get there next, right there.
This exit you're talking about?
Yeah.
Right there.
it's,
Right
when
around
you're
there.
coming down the hill and you've got, yeah, say at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you can have cars stop there on that downhill stretch, and you don't know why. And you're traveling, or most people are traveling at around 65 or 70, and they don't have enough room to actually stop once they realize that the traffic is not slowing down with brake lights, but is actually still.
So when we look at crashes and we kind of look at the types of crashes, is it wet pavement, dry pavement? There are different kinds of crash reduction factors that we can apply. And so, if we see a lot of crashes in wet pavement, there is actually a surface treatment that can be put on the pavement. It actually, ODOT's applied it in a couple areas, and you can actually feel the difference of that pavement versus other pavements. If we're seeing crashes in nighttime hours and there isn't enough lighting, then you can look to install lighting to mitigate those crashes. So when I look at the type of crashes we see in the environment, these are the crash reduction factors that could apply. And so I believe the signal already has LED bulbs out there. So those are estimated to reduce the crashes by approximately 17%. The installation of an actuated or coordinated flashing beacon as an advance warning for a signalized intersection looks to address rear-end crashes specifically and can be as effective as 36%. So that's the top photo there on the right. That is actually one of the mitigation measures that will be going in at the 213 and Beaver Creek intersection as part of the current Beaver Creek Road All Roads Transportation Safety Project. And so when the city and ODOT and the consultant team looked at all those crashes, we specified this as a mitigation measure. If this would make sense as you approach Redland, could be looked at. It's not a cheap project. I'm gonna guess that installation's about $175,000. I was able to get it funded with the grant program. So those are kind of things that can be done. The overhead lane use signs, I know those exist out on 213 between Redland and Clackamas River Drive, or Prairie Schooner.
It goes both ways.
And so there is some of that out there. The 3-inch yellow reflective backplates, I don't know how observant folks are, but those have recently gone in along the 213 corridor as part of an ODOT All Roads Transportation Safety Project. I haven't had the opportunity to look in detail, but I think they may have also placed some supplemental signal heads, so some new signal heads out there as well at these intersections. Problem is I'm driving while I'm going through there, and I don't want to be one of the dots on the map. So I haven't been able to kind of be a passenger and see if that, but I do believe there's been a couple supplemental heads. ODOT did kind of do a pretty region-wide look at these reflective black backplates and the supplemental heads, and those are starting to go in kind of all over in the metro area on ODOT roadways. And then another crash reduction factor is adaptive signal timing. There's only the 2 signals out there.
There's actually
There's two.
3, is it 2?
Two.
I think technically it functions as 3,
Three,
but
yeah.
because there's 2 in each direction.
Right.
Is I think maybe the way to put it. Because Clackamas River Drive has a signal that operates independent of the Prairie Schooner because of the divided highway.
Is there any data within the subset of what you pulled that would lead us to believe if any of it's southbound versus northbound. Because I think what Henry was referring to as southbound, as you're approaching Redland, it kind of dips a little bit and you've got the overpass of Holcomb that's kind of blocking the signal heads
And a curve.
until you get up on it. So if we saw that all the data was related to northbound traffic versus southbound, we could maybe say, well, that's a visual issue there. But if it's pretty well spread out, then maybe that would not be a correct assumption.
Yeah, I saw myself few rear end crashes also on the south
Right.
as people are, so I think it's probably like,
Distracted. So if what we're getting at is a distracted driving thing, nothing we do is really going to fix.
Actually, it's more like, this looks like interstate. I'm going to drive interstate, and it's only, what, 4 miles from Beaver Creek to Redland Road? And I'm saving a half of a second if I can unless I can catch the signal.
Yeah, you can't turn left off of Redlands to northbound 213 and get to the next traffic light. There is an impossibility. I mean, you will get the red light there as you go there. The big question is, does the city of Oregon City patrol that? Is that their jurisdiction for traffic enforcement?
I've seen them on 213 where they're shooting ducks.
They're having
Yeah,
a
they're
revenue.
usually halfway down the hill.
Yeah, but if they have a revenue issue, they can go right there by the gas station, and I guarantee you, at the 8:30 to 9 o'clock, you will be able to get 15 or 20 red light runners going on to 213 there. I witness it every morning,
And you can do it every day.
every day.
oh my God, it happens all the time.
And it's buses, trucks, landscapers, contractors, you name it, all kinds of vehicles. There's not a discriminatory vehicle that doesn't do it.
That's at Redland and 213?
No, that is 213 and Prairie Schooner.
Okay.
And
What's
they,
that gas station there?
when they come around the gas
Right
station there,
signs.
and people just run the red light, and just so they can get on the 213, or the 205 even. I mean, I'm guaranteeing you, if you have a revenue problem, that will be the first place to start. And we could pay for a lot of those traffic lights. Courtesy of the Prairie Schooner exit.
I will tell you, toward the end of the month, when the traffic ticket quota
Yes.
hasn't been made,
Yeah.
they go out on 213.
Oh, great.
I think they're out there more often. I try.
I'm sure they are, but that's when I see 4 or 5 of them working.
But then I think if, like you look accidents and property damage and all that stuff, I mean, yeah, it's $175,000, but, there's also delays, when those accidents happen. So is this something that we could work with ODOT and talk to them and put it, present this data and what's happening here and see if, same thing you're doing on Beaver Creek and 213, and see if this warrants some further study and doing some of these measures?
I think as part of the arts program, so the arts grant program is entirely data-driven. And so ODOT has been looking, I think they've generally started with those low-hanging fruit of getting the reflective backplates up everywhere because those have such a impact. You can see in this photo, it draws your attention, when the headlights reflect off of that. I could reach out and see if they're interested. That I know, let's see, we just had the arts program a year or so ago. It's every 3 years. So I guess, as a city, we would have to decide, would we be willing to sponsor and pay the grant match to install more stuff on ODOT's facilities? Or would we go back and take our project that was just below the funding line and resubmit that, which would include these reflective backplates and new controllers on all of our signals that are not yet done in town. So that's one of the things we have to, do we do something on a highway that's owned by ODOT and gift them something? Or do we, kind of invest in our own internal system?
the developer for the garbage, the former garbage
Landfill.
landfill, there we go. I think he said it was 4 million they were gonna have to invest in the interchange there.
More than that. At Redland and 213?
No, at Prairie Schooner and, 213.
I don't know of any project at that location. Their project is gonna affect Redland and 213?
True,
As
yeah,
is-
it's a back end.
I mean, there's, you know, just,
But they were gonna have to put it in, it was 4 or 5 million, I think is the number he threw out, in road.
Dana knows
Improvements.
more about that, but, you know, the jug handle included taking 3 lanes all the way through the Redland Road intersection to really the Holcomb Bridge. That's where everything gets narrow again. And so, you know, that was 2008. Trying to remember the timeline for that, or
The jug
when the
handle
jug
phase
handle
one
project.
was 2013.
So, you know, that was about a $9 million project then, and I'm sure it's probably doubled by now.
Yeah. Just even the exit there.
But you're right, that development triggers some improvements. The county courthouse triggers. They have a condition of approval that indicates that they need to add capacity at Redland and 213. So there are changes in the horizon. And I think if all the stars align, it'll include developer dollars, city dollars, county dollars, and state dollars, but we'll see.
Yeah, I had one.
But that doesn't fix any of the things between 205 and Prairie Schooner. I mean, those lane merge issues, and, you know, you gotta eat your Wheaties if you're gonna take that route and try to get over into the Prairie Schooner off-ramp. I've tried it myself. What else we got, Dana, on this one?
I didn't have too much else on the crash history unless there's other questions. So again, this is the same slide I shared with you a few months ago. Our requests for speed limit reviews are still at the state speed zone engineer. The investigation's been completed and it's waiting for the state's approval, which I believe was the same answer I got from the state back in November.
And probably next month too.
So that kind of takes us to the next topic, which is speed limits in Oregon. So currently, Oregon has 2 types of speed limits. Statutory speed limits that are set by Oregon Revised Statute. So those are 15 miles an hour in an alleyway, 20 miles per hour in a business district and school zones, 25 miles per hour in a residential district, and then a 65 miles per hour on most interstate highways. If your roadway doesn't fall within those parameters, then it becomes a designated speed limit, which requires an engineering investigation. For those business and residential districts, they need to meet certain requirements, typically driveway densities, which would allow them to be those speeds. So a traditional local neighborhood street is going to always qualify for the 25 miles an hour. When you kind of create that reverse frontage where the collector street is the backyard of the home and there's no driveways, then you don't have enough driveways to sign that as 25, and that would go through a full speed study. So when we do the engineering investigation, again, I think we've talked a little bit about this here, but we look at roadside context, we look at crash history, traffic volumes, the geometry of the roadway, the roadside culture. So kind of what is along there? Is it a sidewalk? Is it like an urban sidewalk feel? Is it a ditch and a rural feel? We look at the densities, and then we look at the 50th and 80th percentile speeds. So those are kind of the list of things that we look at as we try to identify the appropriate speed limit. So in Oregon, in 2011, the House Bill 3150 authorized a road authority to the ability to lower that 25-mile-an-hour residential speed down to 20 when we meet certain criteria. And so that's located in a residential district, volumes less than 2,000 vehicles per day, that 85th percentile speed less than 30 miles per hour, and installation of appropriate traffic control devices. And so this is a resource available to us currently. And so back, I think in about 2018, we presented a program to the Transportation Advisory Committee looking at implementing these 20-mile-per-hour residential speed limits on our family-friendly routes. We have approximately 33 of those. They connect, in our TSP, they connect schools, parks, shared use paths, all of those kind of things. So really trying to identify where that 20-mile-an-hour speed option might make sense. And, you know, we looked at doing, Portland has a neighborhood greenway program that they do their 20 mile per hour. And so we looked at, you know, making our own speed limit sign rider that was a family-friendly route. So we had that discussion with the Transportation Advisory Committee. When we took that to the City Commission, they weren't really interested in a kind of a blanket approach, and they would like the neighborhoods to reach out. So following that discussion, the Kanema neighborhood, who had been advocating for the 20 mile per hour in their neighborhood, wrote a letter, reached out, and we've since implemented what we called a pilot program with the 20 mile per hour in their neighborhood at their request. So that's an option available to go from 25 down to 20. The new item that was recently approved, is an opportunity for what they call delegated authority for speed zones. And so that was approved in 2021, and it amended the Oregon Revised Statutes, Section 810, which is often referred to as the Vehicle Code, which allows cities and then 2 named counties the ability to request that authority to review and implement speed limits locally. So what that does is really kind of takes, it's still a state manual. So the speed limit wouldn't be any different if the state investigated it or the city investigated it. It's just who's doing the investigation and who ultimately issues the speed zone order. Looking into the program, it would require 2 staff members, one to act as the investigator and do all of the research and review, and then a licensed engineer to review and approve that work. At that point, then the state wants to review your first 10 investigations, and if at the conclusion of those 10 investigations, they feel that you've done an appropriate job, then they can delegate the authority to set speed limits within your city to that local agency. So that's kind of a high-level overview of that delegated authority. So what I included as this last slide, and apologies because this is sort of my homemade map. So the base picture is our roadway classification with the speed limits from our transportation system plan. And so then those black squares with the speeds are the speed limits that were in place at the time of the transportation system plan in 2013. These red boxes with the arrow are the ones that have changed since the TSP's been done. And so we lowered the speed limit on Holcomb from 40 to 35. We lowered the speed limit on Malala from May Street to 213 from 35 to 30. The speed limit on Maple Lane Road was lowered to 40. And then Central Point Road speed limit was lowered. I don't remember that cross street, but the section that was 45 was dropped to 35 to match that northern section. And so those are the speed limit reviews that have been completed since I've been here. And again, that Glen Oak Road is one of the ones we're waiting on from ODOT. So we've completed those 4 in the 8 years since I've been here. Those have all been initiated by the community. And we did kind of our own investigation phase, and then we did a community outreach. We did a public survey and kind of pulled what the community wanted to see and had all of that data. So that's kind of options that are out there related to speed limits. I didn't really kind of pose a question, but I think the question is the Transportation Advisory Committee interested in seeing the city pursue the ability to investigate and set our own speed limits?
In my opinion, yes.
Especially if it's something that city can process faster. I mean, you told us that we submitted those other 2,
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
It's been a while. What I am unclear on still is, since the state traffic engineer has to review the city's investigation, if we'll still be waiting in that queue for those first 10.
And that was gonna be my question is, so will this be our kids' kids that have the authority to finally make this? Because I mean, if you've been here for that long and you've done 4, how
And again,
long until we do 8 or
Yeah,
10 total?
We've only done these, actually, I misspoke. 3 of the 4 of these were at the community's request. We did the Malala Avenue one. That was a staff-initiated one as we looked at the Malala Avenue project. So we initiated that one. But otherwise, we typically don't go out looking to redo speed limits unless it's a community request.
And when do we have the staff to do the engineering and the investigation portion, at this time? So, I mean,
Or can that be contracted out?
That's a good point.
Yeah, the
We
2
could
people that do it
contract
have to go through the ODOT training program.
so we're gonna train them, and then they're gonna sit on standby for the 10 evaluations, so by the time we're fully approved, is it gonna be the same 2 people we trained? I mean, I'm just trying to get to the logistical
Yeah,
part of this.
so if we were gonna continue to do a community-based speed review, we may never get to 10. If we were gonna do a programmatic approach and look at, just based off of this map, where things don't maybe seem right, should we be having, these highest speed limits?
Does staff have a queue of 10 places that they've always wanted to amend and have never been, is there work waiting in the queue that we can divvy up for this program and make it useful? Because if there's not, then it sounds like it's not worth pursuing.
So
I would say,
I'm-
and based on the map, that there's
I'd be
about
curious if others-
15 or 20 actual places where you could legitimately expect to have some speed reduction done.
I mean, this is kind of a public perception and a public opinion thing. I mean, one could argue that our speed limits and, so we just got through talking about 55 miles an hour on 213, but that's a little different than what we have in town. I know our police department is concerned about enforcement, right? Because people tend to travel on these roadways the speed that's comfortable, right? And I think there's an element of our community that, and we saw it in some of the questionnaires for both routes that we did the surveys on, Holcomb and Central Point, where, there's an element of the community that would rather we raise the speed limits, right? So I've got mixed feelings about this, but I think the vocal community that shows up at City Hall is often complaining about speeding. And, I don't know how to get around that. But yeah, the whole workload issue is a good question. I'm not quite sure how we're gonna manage that and continue to deliver. You know, we've got a pretty aggressive capital improvement program, and,
I'd love to have the tool on the tool belt, but is it just?
it's interesting that
worth pursuing?
the law actually kind of makes it, it's almost like they're discouraging agencies from wanting to go this way.
I'm sure they are, but it seems to me that there is a pooling option available, at least at the technical data gathering level, and maybe at the engineer approval level, that where maybe West Wind and Oregon City could have shared staff that could do this.
Or could we utilize the person from Clackamas County that's doing it? Because I assume Clackamas County is putting in a application, right?
I believe they are, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's similar to being, you know, different agencies have the ability to deliver federally funded projects. So Clackamas County has that authority. Most of the city jurisdictions don't. But again, that's kind of, you know, I just don't, you know, ODOT's been so lethargic with their reviews, and yet, I mean, we can't be the only agency complaining about this. It just surprised me, but.
I mean, if Clackamas County goes through the certification process, plus they'll have 10 probably in a year, you know, or whatever. And so, same thing, right? You guys work with them on signals.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they do the same, you know?
Could we utilize their engineer and their investigator and then bring that information back to make the decision citywide?
That's a good point. So I guess the other piece is, so the city commission has kind of heard, you know, they get a lot of, despite the fact that we have a transportation advisory committee that's supposed to field all these complaints, usually they go straight to the top and talk to the city commission. So this is on the agenda, on a work session agenda in April. I think it's April 11th. So it feels a little bit early for that because TAC has not really taken the topic on, but there's also this kind of, I call it a demand for discussion of this at the commission level. And so
Bring it back in May after they've had
we will probably bring it back in May if you're feeling really passionate about this topic. And, you know, I mean, I do think the question about the county is a good one, so we can look into that.
Okay.
Have there been any concerns raised on Myers Road and Highway 213? I feel like I see a near miss almost every day there as it starts, you know, going from 2 lanes into 1 lane. There's either like a racing match going on in between, you know, these cars, you know, who's gonna get there first. And then you have people walking across because there's apartment complex, but there's a college. And so it's just, I feel like there's, you know, constantly, I get anxiety every time I get into that intersection because like there's cars either running a red light, near miss, and there's people walking and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, I've seen the one where I'm on Myers Road, getting ready to turn on 213, coming back into town, and somebody's coming across from the college, and people are watching the light
Yeah,
and not the pedestrian.
exactly.
And I've seen people crossing from the apartments over to Winco. And again, you got 3 cars headed out onto 213, all of them looking at the signal, waiting to tromp.
Yes,
And it's also a split signal, so if you watch the wrong one, you're going and you shouldn't. But you don't see the pedestrians on either side.
exactly.
Because if you're in the turn lane, you've got 2 cars to the right blocking you. And if you're in the other 2 lanes, you got cars blocking in both directions.
Yeah. So if we moved forward with the request to do our own speed limits, we would only be able to set speed limits on local city streets, not on county roadways like Beaver Creek, Abernathy, or ODOT roadways like 213 and 99E. Those would still be reviewed by the road authority.
But we could work with the county much easier.
Yeah. I think that might be the ticket. If we can do it through the county, it makes sense. Otherwise, I just don't think we're gonna have the volume or the number of streets involved to get to that number. Let's see what the city council says, or city commission.
Dana, this is a side note, and it involves this traffic thing. Could we have a paragraph in it of talking about that reduced 20-mile-an-hour section? So that people reading it will at least know it's a possibility? Thank you.
You know that question about who to know to talk to at ODOT, how it works? When I talked to the electrician, I reported to him that the Abernathy Bridge on the northbound lanes, the lights weren't working. And from 10th Street and West Lynn,
You mean the streetlights or the
Streetlights.
signals?
the overhead streetlights over the bridge. And he says, oh yeah, I know what the problem is there. He says, the construction crew broke the line when they're doing the digging at the bridge. And they have to run a generator to run the traffic, the highway safety lights, or the traffic lights, not the traffic lights, the city, street lights on there. And apparently several nights they weren't refueling the diesel to run the generator, and so all the power's down. But the northbound lane still has power because they didn't cut that line. So he says, make note to myself, I will tell them to make sure they refuel it every night before they leave so that the generator runs all night. And that's a dark bridge to be going over on a rainy, foggy, snowy night. When you're going across Abernathy and they have all that traffic coming in off of 43 and then 99. So. But we need to find the person at ODOT that reviews these things. Push that little piece of cheese a little farther.
I think we're in the queue with everyone else, is what I'm told.
Maybe you need a bigger mousetrap.
All right, thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
Was there anything else from staff? No?
Well, just acknowledgement that this was the Audrey Dana show for sure. And Vance and I had a vacation, I think, or two in there somewhere. So I definitely did. So I want to acknowledge that. I know I missed the last meeting too. So yeah, so there is a lot of effort that went into this, all these extra little tools that we have that we've got tuned, that are getting tuned up and will continue to get tuned up. That's been Audrey's initiative, and so it's been a pleasure having you help us with that for sure. And then, yeah, just acknowledge our new members, so thanks for being here. And
Thanks.
Anybody have anything we want to make sure gets on the agenda for next time that we didn't already discuss? Crickets. All right, unless anybody stops me, I think we're going to be adjourned. Meeting is adjourned.
thank you.